You're unmuted.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you, not in this way, but it's nice to see you anyway. And as you can tell, we're following safety procedures here on campus too, because I'm not alone in this room. I have several people here. Teresa and Andrew are here with me. I want to start by just reminding everyone that this is a recorded session. So please keep that in mind as I move through this. Can everyone hear me? All right, great. Well, I want to begin by welcoming everyone to the new academic year, the 2020-2021 academic year. This is the time of year that many of us, probably all of us, are very excited about coming back. And so are our students and their families. There's a lot of, there are many emotions that we all face at this time. If families are sending off their newly minted high school graduates to college, there are many more different types of emotions that we might have, especially if they're living on campus for the first time. But I want to welcome the continuing faculty and all of the new faculty and staff who are about to embark on this very different but exciting journey that we face this year. And I want to thank many of you who are on this meeting, and there are others who aren't, who have extended a warm welcome to me and been patient as I've tried to learn names, faces, masked and unmasked. I'm more challenged by the masked faces because right now it's pretty easy to remember what you look like. But some of you have met me on campus with a mask and I wasn't sure who I was talking to, but I appreciate that patience. As I also get to know the university, the campus, both the physical environment, but the institution, practices, culture, and so forth. And really the history of the college and how you have done things and how the college operates and is being structured. As we all know, the campus is going to be very different this fall. You've heard from the provost and the president a lot about the big high level. If you've been on campus recently, anytime I would say in the last 6 weeks, and this is the beginning of my 6th week, you will have noticed a lot of changes since the last time you were here. I've seen a lot of changes just in that brief, 5 weeks that I've been here. The building is well prepared. It's going to look familiar and yet unfamiliar for many reasons. There are a lot of stickers, signs, markings all over the building. And of course, this is part of the safety plan. So the preparation has really been at the highest level. And then there are many things we don't see when we walk around the building. So I think that those of you who come back or have been back should feel that we've been well prepared. Everything will seem to many people familiar and different, right? That's a common theme these days. And as we all come back to a new academic year with our usual hopes and expectations and excitement of all the possibilities that could happen and will happen with all of our ideas and goals, we're still faced with a tremendous amount of uncertainty, unexpected. And the familiar will look often very unfamiliar. So what we want to do is to, be easy on ourselves as we begin to move through this new space, physically, but mentally, and I would even say spiritually, because this is really new territory for everyone. And while it may provide some comfort to know that we're not in this alone, that may not be enough comfort all the time. But it is really uncharted territory that will require considerable amount of flexibility. At the same time that we really must remember that for our new students, especially the recent high school graduates, this is a new chapter in their life, like it would be for any new high school students in previous years, despite all the differences right now. And this is something that they and their families have planned for a very long time. And so those feelings, those hopes, those expectations remain for them, in a very different form, of course, and we need to always keep that in mind. I'm sure, we'll see how that plays out on campus. Imagine yourselves in their shoes. And if some of you know an 18-year-old who graduated high school in May or June, a high school that they were suddenly abruptly forced to leave, you know that things haven't been the same for a long time. Summer before college and all of the excitement, parties and activities, gone. They might face their own personal or family challenges to their health or their financial circumstances. We know that mental health has been aggravated by the pandemic, on top of the usual apprehensions, right? Excitement and dreams about becoming a university student. Returning students will face similar challenges with other concerns. Like, how will the pandemic impact their studies? How about their career aspirations? What about internships? What about their chance of attaining their dreams? Because the university, college education is about dream fulfillment, about goal fulfillment. It is about aspiration, very much so everywhere, but especially at institutions like Towson University. So you know that I'm a historian by training, and as a historian, I often step back from situations like this, and I can understand them, and I'm sure I'm not alone, I'm just giving you my historian's perspective, but I understand that all times will pass, right? We'll make it through it somehow, but we'll be different on the other side. We don't know what that's going to look like, and that can be exciting. It can cause a lot of apprehension, and maybe it causes both of those at the same time and many other things. I believe that despite the uncertainty and hardship of what's happening right now, what's happened in the last 6 months, our goals of what we want to do as faculty, what we want to do in our work lives and our personal lives continue to remain important. So how do we continue to move forward and move toward those goals and dreams? How we stay safe, healthy physically and mentally? And how differently will the old familiar look? These are, in my mind, critical questions as I move forward. So right now, my primary concern, as it is, I'm sure, for everyone, I lost my microphone, sorry about that, there's an unexpected, but as it is for everyone, is safety, right? And much of the work was done, as I mentioned already, before I arrived, or maybe while you have been away. And all the preparation is complete or near complete. Doesn't mean that more won't be done. And we're just going to have to see how things work. The building is in excellent shape. And as we begin to come back and populate the building more, last 2 weeks, more and more people have been on campus, and even students have started to arrive. We will just have to respond to sort of the lived experience of all those preparations. And we want to know how things are going, right? We want to know in the dean's office. It's very important for us to be in touch with you and your experiences and what you're seeing and hearing from students. So we're all facing this situation in common. And now what we need to do is to figure out how to make sort of the best of it, how to be as normal in these very unnormal times. And we have to remember that, when I said that our students and their families have a lot of hope and aspiration when they think about college education, they're also doing other things. They're providing, their physical resources, financial resources. They're also investing right now their health in allowing their students to come back to campus. So safety is my main priority right now. And I think an expression of my confidence in what has been done to prepare the university and our building in particular, you'll see it in different ways. If you've been in the building last week or this week, I have walked around and I popped in open offices just to say hi. I'm not sure everyone has seen it that way. I'm not checking out, but I just want to say hi. And then early next week on Monday and Tuesday, you'll see me at the front door, greeting whoever comes through that door three busy times in the day. First, so that they see who the new dean is, if they're interested in that. But I want to see who's coming through the door. And I think that's a great expression of confidence in what we're doing. Of course, we have to have other priorities, right? So I have longer term priorities. In the first year, though, because I'm new to the institution, it's really important for me to learn as much as I can about the university, its institutions, its people, all of you, right? All of our students, our alumni, our predecessors, which if you've met me already, I ask a lot of questions. And you might find some of those questions to be obvious or maybe even too many questions. But I want to ask questions to learn, and I'm hoping that some of those questions will prompt you to perhaps think about old things in a new way or reflect on things you haven't reflected on for a long time. I think that's one of the values of any start of an academic year or period in life. And so I will certainly be putting new eyes just because I'm new here on everything. I'll be asking new questions and asking old questions that you may have asked many times before. And I will hope that we can look for new answers or different answers if appropriate. And I think in many cases it will be. That's just part of our academic and intellectual pursuits, right? We're constantly reflecting, revising, and trying to figure out how to do things better. And then together we'll grow, right? I will certainly grow a lot because I don't know the institution as you do. But I'm hoping we'll come to depend on each other and grow together, share in each other's successes. I think it's vitally important to share those successes and to celebrate them and to understand when things don't go well, why didn't they turn out as planned? And then what can we do and try again? Maybe, of course, in different ways. I have met and continue to meet with the chairs individually and as a group, and with the administrative assistants as a group. And I'm meeting many more of you as you return to work or request meetings. And in each of those gatherings, you will have seen what I just described, right? I ask questions. I'm hoping that the questions also prompt some reflection as well. So we need to, I'll say it again, but we need to remember, we need to keep alive the hopes, dreams, and goals while we return to normal life. We need to keep alive those ideals that brought us into this university and inspired us to become faculty and staff. Working in a university, taking on an academic career, many have called this a vocation. It's a calling. Whether or not you agree with it, it is a very different kind of profession than most professions in the world. It's also something that's beyond work. Certainly we all come to work, we all receive salary, benefits, things like that, but it's something that all of us are driven to do, right? And we love for various reasons. So looking beyond the pandemic, one of the overriding questions, and it's really a theme for the first, but beyond the first year, I think it should always be a theme, is how do we build upon the great work that you've done here at Towson University to shape a 21st century liberal arts education? How do we build upon that? How do we make that vital and vibrant as the century moves along? We're 20 years into that new century, and if you look back on your history at the university or the university's history, there's been tremendous change, right? It's a very different institution than it was before. It's not brand new. There are many remnants of the past, right? That's how change happens, of course. But we need to continue to be vibrant and change as needs change in our lives, in the world, and so forth, right? And this, of course, requires reflection, and it requires deepening certain things, like expanding and deepening the presence in the community. You and the university and the college have done a tremendous job at expanding partnerships in the university and making Towson part of the community. Not in name, not by slogan, but in reality. And it's those kinds of things that I'm particularly interested in, among others. Also, many of you engage in high-level research. And as the university is starting to change its identity, willingly or unwillingly, research needs to be something that we look at very carefully. And research is, of course, what you do, your research plans, your search for external funding. But in my mind, research also has to be something that can be sustained by the university, by the college as well. There needs to be a mix of what you can get outside of the university and how the university itself can support you, not only in your research, but of course to get those external grants. Those grants don't just come from nowhere, right? And again, as I said, you're on very firm ground, thanks to the leadership of Terry Cooney, very capable staff in the dean's office, chairs, those of you who serve on different college committees, university committees, department committees, and really everyone who works with our students. That's everyone in this room. I can't really imagine anyone here who doesn't have some impact on student lives. And I'm just going to give you a story, and I'm sure you all have your own stories. So I worked, my last job, I worked 17 years ago, was at University of Chicago, very urban campus. There's no green space except on the roof, right, where there's a garden. It's a vertical campus. And so every day I would walk in a certain way to my office, 2 buildings connected. I would purposefully walk in so I could walk through the cafeteria where the students, the dorm students in particular, but also anyone could buy food, sit, and socialize, things like that. And I got to know one of the cashiers. And I just found her to be very friendly and so forth. But then I saw her in action with the students. And then I heard from students about this, cashier in the cafeteria and the impact she had on their lives. These are students who were away from home. Some of them were very far away from home and might have really kind of human interaction that they had had at home when they were in a family environment. Even if they thought, oh, I'm so tired of being home with mom and dad, that made a big impact on their lives. They will go away from the university remembering many other things too, but I would guarantee you that that interaction with that cashier every day, whether it was breakfast, lunch, dinner, or coffee, can also remain with them. So that's why I say everyone has an impact on our students, and we all impact our students in a different way, and they learn from us as well in different ways. As we move forward in continuing to develop and flesh out this, what you've done so well and what I've said so far, we are also contributing to larger conversations. And that's another thing I want us always to be mindful of. Yes, what we're doing here on campus at Towson is very important, but we also have a lot of potential and already are impacting larger conversations within academia, within the larger world. We all know that higher ed is under attack regularly from different corners of the public sphere who don't appreciate what we do. Right now, with the pandemic raging still in many parts of the country, families suffering, what are we hearing a lot of? We're hearing that story about the critique of the cost of higher education. If our children aren't going to be on campus, why do we need to pay full tuition? I'm not suggesting we have an answer to that question, but one of the answers is to continually remind people that higher ed is not an extravagance. It's not just for groups of young people to have a good time, for legacy students, and so forth. This is about something transformational. This is about transforming people's lives in so many different ways. And it's not the same transformation for everyone. And those answers are going to be important through our students, our alumni, the work you do on campus, off campus, when you interact with your professional societies and so forth. So I think that's really important to keep in mind all the time, that it may at times seem, oh, this is just my set of classes, my department and its issues, or the college and so forth. It's about a lot more than that. And we need to recognize the importance of what we're doing. And that, of course, goes to, in a sense, the vocation. We are out there, in a sense, as standard bearers for higher education in the United States. So where will the answers come from? Everywhere, as far as I'm concerned. There's potential for answers to come from everywhere, but I think that they will assemble around what we believe is essential to the University of Education, right? And part of that is experiential, connecting us to the outside world. You do that wonderfully. And there's more to be done, but you do that wonderfully, really well established that way. And it's also about looking beyond our borders. We all do that probably in our research and in our teaching, but maybe taking it the next step or two. Even considering, the use of technology in ways we've never imagined, or AI, or the natural environment, many other things. I've seen those collaborations, I've seen those connections in my few weeks here. I think there's potential for much more. And I think that's a really exciting place to go. I think AI is fascinating. I don't understand it the way a lot of other people do, because I don't have that technical background. But there are so many potentials, and I think technology will be part of many of those potential things that we do in the future. I really would like to see also CLA to continue and actually expand its interaction with the university in general. Even more cross-college collaboration. I had a chat with the dean the other day who said, "Oh, I like that program in your college, but it really belongs in my college." And I thought, well, that's really interesting because I think her students belong in our college. But it seemed like a light conversation at the time, but it was really about something much deeper. And so we started talking about, well, how can we actually collaborate, not move programs and students around so much, but maybe see how our students can benefit from what the other college offers. But beyond that, even imagine that they can benefit, and imagine that they could go across the borders and do something. So all of this together addresses the physical, because that's the safety, of course, and many other things, intellectual, and what I would call the spiritual needs of the students and all of us. And all of this will contribute to what I call the sustainable or sustainability of CLA. Sustainability is about many things. We may think about sustainability in terms of fundraising, grant writing, and receiving grants. That's very important. To me, sustainability is also about integrating what we think is essential into our curriculum, into what we do in our departments, in our lives at the universities, especially things that haven't yet been integrated, and making them more than just okay, it's a yearly plan, and next year we'll try it again, and we'll try it again. That's great to start with. How do we make something more permanent that we feel is really valuable? I mean, I'm not going to get into examples of this, but I've already encountered a number of those, and I've talked with some of the faculty about and shares, how do we do that? How can we do that in the future? I want to also say that we have to include in everything that we do what the provost said earlier this week in Welcome Back to Faculty. I absolutely loved when she talked about equity, empathy, and excellence. I mean, empathy this week, if you're paying attention to anything, even in the political arena, empathy is a big, big word and idea that has been thrown out and talked about every night. Empathy can be over-talked, but what the provost meant, and she gave examples of this, is try to place ourselves in the shoes of others, whether it's your fellow faculty member or staff member or students, and think, what are they going through right now? What might be bothering them? That's terribly important. Yesterday, and I don't know if this has been circulated widely, it will be, I believe, by the end of the week, the deans and chairs received an announcement about new additional mental health care services for students, 24/7, especially responding to all of the mental health needs that were ongoing and aggravated by the pandemic, but also that are new as a result of the pandemic, and just normal, life processes. That's really important. We need to constantly ask ourselves that question. Some of us are in much better situations than others. And I've been coming to work every day for 5 weeks. When I think about my family member and friends, I don't know anyone else who's doing that. My life seems so normal in an old-fashioned way, except for the mask and all the social distancing and everything like that. But I have to stop and remember, this is not normal right now. It was normal earlier. If I don't stop and remember that, I can never even begin to think I can be empathetic to anyone else. But to that equity, empathy, and excellence, I would add 4 C's. Calm, I already talked about that we really need to be calm. Confidence, and I've talked about how we need to show our confidence in our behavior and actions. Civility is really important. I think that a lot of people coming back, including our students, will be at times addled and frustrated and maybe very anxious about not just the normal things that they would be anxious about when they're at university and trying to study and learn and encountering all the complex ideas that and texts that you're introducing them to. But they're going to also, at some point, wonder, oh no, am I going to get something from going to class or going to see my professor and so forth. So I think civility will be very important in responding to those moments when we might see agitation, panic, and so forth. And then creativity. How are we going to respond to everything that we encounter, and how are we going to be creative about what we want to do in the long term? I can say more a little bit. I will in the question and answer because I want to answer some questions that address that as well. But I want to stop at this point and turn to my biography because I think many of you are aware of it, many of you are not, and maybe I'll add a few details. So by training, I'm a historian of Russia. And that means that I spent the first part of my career, by the way, at a Research One University of Helsinki in Finland. And I primarily researched. I was required to teach one class a year. The goal was to get grant money and have projects and publish and so forth, which I did, and I did it furiously. I loved it. The questions I was looking at had to do with identity among peasantry in a province south of Moscow in the late 19th, early 20th century, a time of great change, right? And I was looking initially at how did peasants identify with something beyond their local community, but then I realized that there were many identities. Today we know this, but then people weren't thinking this. There were many identities that they were beginning to develop, become aware of, and interact with and express. Religious, cultural, ethnic, regional, sometimes beyond, region to something bigger like empire. And so I was very interested in that. And I had to, of course, question long-term or long-standing assumptions about the lower class rural folk. I spent most of my time situated in St. Petersburg, which is a former imperial city, the former capital of Imperial Russia. And I can only tell you that most of the people I knew in academia who didn't study peasants asked why. What could you possibly learn from them? And I think that was a really important lesson, because I'm not from peasantry, or at least not right now. I think back, generations probably. But we need to remember that everyone's voice needs to be heard. Everyone is important. Everyone makes the human community what it is, not just then, but today too. And so I then took that interest. I published extensively about it. You read it all if you're all interested. And decided at some point I want to move a little bit beyond that and think about some new technologies that really impacted these emerging and not always well-formulated identities. And so I particularly focused on two things. Transportation, meaning the railway, long-distance railway that brought people from one part of the country to the other, and I looked at pilgrimage, religious pilgrimage in particular, because there's an explosion of it at this time of year. It's a great opportunity to look at people who are trying to figure out, they're using an old cultural form connected to their religion, but then they're encountering all these different people from all over the empire, sometimes Europe as well, and they're challenged to think who they are, think about maybe even who they want to be. It was really fascinating. But the other part was, the other cultural experience was cinema. Most people think of early Russian cinema as the 1920s and all the great Soviet innovations and experimentation with cinema. But I was interested in the period before that. So it begins 1907. That's when the first Russian domestic filmmaking was done. And then it ended right after the revolution in 1919 when the cinema industry was nationalized by the government. So I was looking there to see how were some of these ideas of identity in a variety of ways expressed on screen, and how did people interact with it, right? As they went to movies, and because you can't go to movies then, right? You couldn't do that at home and experience them. So I did that until about 20, well, I should say my Finnish experience ended in 2001. My research continued after that. And I ended up at Roosevelt University in Chicago, which is a very different kind of place than a research one. Urban, comprehensive, first generation students, low income, and so forth. And I found students at Roosevelt, as I will at Towson too, I'm not saying they're the same types, but there are similarities, to be more exciting than my students in Finland. It has nothing to do with Finnish students. But the Finnish students knew that they made it. That was the highest university in the country. And a lot of them were heritage or legacy students. The ones at Roosevelt weren't. These were students who struggled to get the assignments done, let alone find time because of family and work responsibilities. And they didn't always come to class prepared, but boy, I could sense how hard they worked. And they asked questions. They tried as hard as they could to engage with the text, even when they hardly had a chance to read it. But when they did, they were remarkable. And I found them to be really inspiring. Something else that inspired me there is I had the opportunity to work to lead the reform of general education. And what we did was we focused on especially introducing experiential learning as a requirement. And so I think those are really, really important things, and you are doing that very well here too. I also, in the last 2 years, was fortunate enough to work on a Mellon-funded project in history. It was a project that was in 4 different major urban areas and involved 11 different types of institutions, very different, including some community colleges. And the goal was to see what could be done to these courses, what changes, curricular, co-curricular, to reduce the high attrition rates of African Americans, Latinx, underprivileged first generation. They're not all the same people. Sometimes they are all one person, especially African American males, because the attrition rate was very high, in some cases as high as 80%. And you might say, well, what does that matter in a history survey? Because I initially thought the same thing. Well, the reality is, if you look at research around the country, students in their first semester at university who fail the history survey have a very high likelihood of dropping out of college and never coming back. So if you think of the residual effect of those groups dropping out at high rates and not coming back, it's significant and has repercussions, very long-term repercussions. So anyway, that's a bit of what I did. I want to talk a little bit about the way I look at the world and the way I work, and then I'll answer questions. So I think of the world, as I said, historically. I take a very long view. Some people may not always appreciate that. I know that the so-called best and worst times are not the best and worst for everybody, right? In these times, which seem so challenging, that we could say, wow, the affluent, the very wealthy, people who are in the stock market in any kind of way might be feeling, well, they're bad, but they're not that bad in other ways. But in a sense, things always change, right? And they're never going to be bad or good forever. I like to be in space. I like to be between the best and the worst. And that's not a way of compromising, by the way. But it's a zone where I feel comfort, I feel satisfaction, I feel challenge, I feel the burden of hard work, hard problems. I'm very interested in self-critique. I find it all that in between area, and it's a place where I think a lot of creativity goes on. So that's what I aspire to. I like things that are the best. I'm not so fond of the worst. But I think that often when we try for the absolute best, we can also be sort of tripped up when we don't quite get there. We should aspire to it, but we should be realistic about it. And I really truly believe what I said earlier, that we all have part in creating the world, not just Towson, not just CLA, not just your programs and departments. And I believe that we're in constant dialogue with different people, consciously or not, and that's where some of the creativity happens. So I'm very interested in hearing your stories and learning from them. If you've ever talked to me, you know that I can, as you can tell probably right now, run on a little bit, but I want to know your stories. I find your stories far more interesting than my story, because I know my story. I want to know yours. I value hard work. I value fairness and equity. Civility I mentioned about. Honesty is really important to me. Even if that means there's hard news to convey, not just me to you, but you to me. I really value that. I also believe firmly in a work-life balance. It's very easy, especially when you work in university as a professor or as an administrator, especially when we don't have the most defined work hours, where no one is saying to you, are you there or not? For the most part, if you're a faculty member or administrators, it's different, and for staff. But I really believe in the work-life balance. So I'm trying hard not to send any emails after dinner time, which is for me like 6, 7 o'clock, because I don't want anyone to feel like they have to answer. If there's an emergency, that's different, but every day is not an emergency in my mind. And humor, I think that's really important. That's the prepared statements, and I want to tell you, if we were in person, one thing I would ask is for all the new faculty to stand up. I won't ask you to raise your hand because I don't know if everyone can see everyone, but I really would like, to acknowledge the new faculty and welcome them warmly into the college. We did that on Monday at the new faculty. Okay, thank you. At the new faculty welcome. And we just need to make sure that our new faculty feel very welcome as they start their work, whether they're on campus or off campus completely. And I'm hoping each department has already figured out how to make that happen. Imagine when you started as a new faculty member and how different it was. What would it be like to start today? The new faculty know this, or you may never see your colleagues for 5, 6, or more months. What is it like to only meet your colleague as a shadow on the screen? I mean, we want to make sure that the new faculty's experience is rich as it should be under normal circumstances, and make them feel part of the family, part of the group, part of the university and college. It's really important. I have no answers, like what are the best ways to do it? You all know what are good ways to do it. And so I'm hoping that you'll extend that hand. Watch out for the new faculty. We all know that new faculty have faced certain challenges under normal experiences. Now imagine how much more that they will face because of the pandemic. I want to start with this question. Do you have any sense, which I've answered, but I'll say a few more words, of CLA's priorities for the future, or are you focused only on surviving the semester? Well, I don't think we can at all separate those now, and I'm not suggesting the question about that. It's absolutely undeniable that everyone's energy and focus, most of it is, the bulk of it, I'll say, is on safety and the coming semester, especially the first few weeks. But what I've told to people, chairs and others in meetings, is let's get through the first couple of weeks, and then we can start addressing other problems or other issues that are longer term. Okay, and that's what I think we have to do. If after a couple of weeks things become even more challenging, we might have to postpone that a little bit. It's a question of what's most important at the moment, and we just don't know how long that will last. I really do think, though, that the Baltimore region is a great opportunity to expand your presence. And Towson has that presence and name in the community, and it can expand further. And I think that's something that many of you are hoping to do or thinking of doing, and I'd like to see how we can support that, how I can support that, right? And it's going to vary by department, by program, by individual. Some programs are so well established. I think it's important to learn from what they've done, even if it seems like disciplines in the work is so different. There's really nothing in common. There is something always. I want to say something about collaborations. I really think that there's a lot more we can do with collaborations within the college, and then between the college and different activities on campus. There's a lot of great work going on, but I think that we need to challenge ourselves to think, what might that look like? We've all, if you've been in academia for 10, 15, 20 years or longer, you know that breaking down the disciplinary walls is a constant challenge. Some institutions, some departments do that better than others. I think that we just need to keep looking at those kinds of ways, synergies and places we can collaborate. Again, how does that give meaning, or how is it meaningful on campus-wide? And I've asked some of you those questions already, and some of you have done a great job at that. The second question is sort of related to the first in my mind. Is there college funding for attending conferences virtually? So to me, funding is about sustainability. I want to give a little bit bigger picture, sense of the picture. But sustainability is like what I said earlier. It's not just about finances. It's not just about budgets. It's about the institution and its culture. How do you build in what you want to do? How do you make your culture sort of one of the driving forces behind everything that eventually will need a budget and will include, funding and so forth? I think behind this question, and I will answer, is the state of the budget right now. I have nothing new to add from what you've already heard the president or the provost say. I think we should expect belt tightening. This is not a doom and gloom, announcement. I think we all know that. I'm not sure it's really hit because I believe Towson has been in such good financial shape for so long. But these are really, really different times. We don't have concrete information on what that means. We've already done a round of cuts, which I'm hoping nobody felt. It impacted travel, because we're not traveling now, so that's a pretty easy place to take the money from. That was where the bulk of the cuts happened. The goal here is to make belt tightening. I think the goal, for me, the goal is in the university is to make this belt tightening, as painless as possible. That's why so far we probably haven't done it. I say probably because there have been a few things that some people have noticed. For example, are you able to hear me still or no?
Still in life support, so you're okay.
For example, some staff members have been reassigned to other areas. Okay? And we might see some of that might have happened in college. I don't know because I haven't been here long enough to know. And the thinking behind that is that by reassigning staff members from areas where there really isn't any work because of the pandemic to an area where their talents and skills can apply, and because of the hiring freeze, we can't hire into those positions, then maybe that person could move over. Of course, it goes through a process. The supervisors have to be on board. The person making the change has to agree to it. It's not a forced assignment. So those are some things that have happened. And I think we might see more of that as time goes on. What we do have to feel good about is enrollment. Our enrollments are very strong in the college and the university level. They may not be quite where they should have been this fall, but they're very close. And if you've looked or if you've noticed from your classes, our classes, many of them are fully enrolled, almost fully enrolled. We have a number of classes that are not over-enrolled, but they have wait lists, and so forth. This is because of the hard work you've done long before I ever seen. That's what you've done. Those are your successes. And if you think, well, because of all of that, then why would we have to tighten up? It's because you did it, we don't have to tighten our belts anymore. It may not be satisfying to everybody, but truly that's the result of one of the results of your good work on the budget. Okay? And again, that's a sustainability question, because part of sustainability is retention. In May, I am sure the president, provost, and so forth had no idea, like everyone around the country, would we have a student body in the fall? What would it be? Well, we've retained well, and the numbers, we won't see it visually because there aren't students in those numbers on campus, but we did very well that way, and that's tremendously important. What about conference funding?
Well, yes, that money remains. So I'm not changing anything there. The process will be the same, and I cannot tell you right now that I understand the process completely. But whatever existed in the past, yes, I can put an announcement out soon, just reiterating this and clarifying. But we have to follow all the university's travel policies. So we're anticipating, again, little or no travel output for the fall semester, and then we'll have to see. Mini semester, I think we've already made a decision as a university that it'll continue through January, that travel restriction, even if that's not formally done, but travel courses are not being sponsored for mini semester. And then we'll see about spring semester. I mean, I think everyone would like spring to be normal again, but if it's not, we can't travel. Well, that means even less money on travel, right? But there is money for conferences. So when you apply for or if you want to attend virtual conferences following all the stipulations of funding in the past, that's fine. You should go ahead and do that. And I think some institutions or organizations have lowered their fees. One that I belong to that I will be attending virtually in November, actually abruptly this week, eliminated its fee. Because even if we're in fairly rather from we're in good shape financially, many institutions are not. So the only way for those organizations to have a conference is to lower the rate. But yes, go ahead. The process is the same. Okay. If you do have to do some local travel like that for a conference, and it's permitted by Towson's travel policy, yeah, that's eligible for funding as well. Okay, but of course we know that's not going to be a very large budget for that, large bill for that. Next question is, if faculty want to talk with you, how should they contact you directly? Well, yes, please directly. But what do I mean by that? So some of you already know, because some of you already emailed me, and I really welcome that. I try to answer everyone's email. If I don't, it's only because it somehow got buried, not intentionally. And that happens. I think we all know how email can go. Takes me often a couple of days, but not always. I might have a break and think, okay, great, ideal time to answer the message. I can't wait this afternoon, maybe 2 hours later. I wouldn't take that as the norm. I really like email for lots of reasons, especially now because physical safety reasons. We don't have to even think about are we safe, are we not safe. But it's a good way to have sort of an interaction with me and with each other privately, not in a group format. If you want to see me in person, it's going to be virtual right now. But you can make an appointment to see me. Just contact Paula Zine, as you would in the past, I'm sure, and she'll set up a virtual meeting. Just make sure you tell her, why and all of that. I really don't like to go into meetings not knowing what they're about. If you absolutely don't feel comfortable telling me because it's a sensitive topic, that's okay. But I prefer to know something. And at the same time, when we do meet, and it might be in the hallway, right? Tell me a little bit, give me some background and context. Because I have experienced many encounters at the university where, and even meetings, where people just assume that I would know everything right away. I don't know everything right away. Imagine when you came to house, you can't possibly know everything right away. So give me a little context about your situation. You may even think that your chair has told me something. Maybe, but maybe not. And maybe I forgot. So provide me a little context. I would really like that. I don't encourage drop-bys, not just because of the pandemic, but I don't encourage it because I'm in so many meetings. You don't want to waste your time. Most of the time, I will find you in a meeting. And then you'll spend time coming down and you're disappointed. So that's why I think it's important just to reach out to Paula. If you reach out to me and say, hey, I'd like to meet with you about A, B, and C, I'll just ask Paula to set up a meeting. Okay? But Paula's really great at doing that, and so I encourage you to set them up. And then I did get a number of questions about working on campus. That's how I will categorize them. And then once I do this, we'll look at while I was talking, if there's anything different. I was not here in March, right? I arrived middle of July. And my understanding from many people, many meetings, and some of the questions that I got, is that the message has changed over time. And I can't disagree or agree with you because I don't personally know, but I, as a historian, could imagine, yes, it has changed. And I'll take that as a starting assumption. My way of understanding that is, and it may not agree with yours, is that things changed in messaging in part because the situation in the world changed. I was here on campus when I interviewed the day the decision was made to extend spring break and then eventually close down until now, basically. No one expected it, right? And a lot of things were done and said over the next few months everywhere, not just here, that had to be altered. So I'm imagining that some of the, what may seem to be people as a different communication is due to the fact that it's an evolving situation. And it will continue to evolve. So whatever the president or provost might tell you this week could change next week because the situation is out of control and it requires institutional responses in line with everything else that that the president always talks about, state regulations, local authorities, and so forth. That doesn't make it any more comfortable if you're uncomfortable with those changes. Maybe some of the communication, I don't know how easy it is for everyone to keep up on the communication because there's so much of it. As a newcomer, I'm overwhelmed, but I would imagine I'm not alone in that. And people who've been here a long time can be overwhelmed. So a constant question I ask or recommendation I ask, whether it's Dean's Council, sometimes Provost Council, or meetings with HR or individuals who actually put out information, is can we have some simple way of figuring out the latest, right? What's the most vital? I'm someone who loves bullet points, and I prefer it in a page, but I don't need it on a page. Bullets and then links, and I think you can find a lot of that on the website. But that's what I'm hoping for more of, because for me as a newcomer, that's the way I can learn very quickly. I have spent hours and hours and hours going through the website, very helpful, but in the end, I'm sometimes not sure, well, wait a minute, two different things were said. I'm sure you feel the same way. So coming back to the building and staffing it, you have to remember, I know there's some concern about it, there's some unhappiness about it. We have to remember that as of last week, Monday, the status changed. So we began to come back to work. And that requires us to provide staffing in most areas that have some interaction with students. I'm not talking about the provost will say, well, what about the grass cutters? They're not what we do. Of course they have to be there. Can't remotely yet do grass cutting. But we have to have a presence for the student. We have to show them that we believe in what we're doing here and we're confident about it. I'm not saying you have to buy into it, or even 100%. But we do have to have staffing. So what we did with the building was, and this was a big project beginning of August, was we needed to have staffing during normal business hours, 5 days a week. So we achieved that. It is not perfect. The imperfection is that I really wanted 2 academic suites open at all times, not necessarily all day long, but just 2, any 2, in the dean's office open at all times. Dean's office is open at all times, that's for sure. And it's been a challenge. So sometimes in the week, you might have only 1 academic office, and there might be a few hours here and there where there is no one at the dean's office. We're going to have to adjust to that. Hopefully everyone has the signs up, and it should be on our webpage too when things are open. For students, for you as well, as you need to contact people during the work. That is, I think, the best scenario. We are expecting very low density. We can't really say there's no risk. There's some risk, but I would hope the risk is as low as it can be. And I think we all have to get used to risk as we try to lead normal lives and take care of our daily needs and not so daily needs. And that's that. Some people will not be able to come on campus for various reasons, and that's then going to require a conversation with HR. And several people have done that already, and our partner in HR has been fantastic about it. We require formal leaves. Some of them are already enacted in law, extension of FMLA, and so forth. But it's not a matter of, well, I'm just going to stay home because I don't feel like I can go to work. You'll have to be taken as a formal leave of some sort. And that's the university's policy and that's the practice. And we'll see what happens, okay, going forward. And if we need to make some tweaks, adjustments, we'll do. There's a question in the chat. Administrative assistants are being put at risk, and faculty and students are not. I am sorry to disagree with that. I think faculty who teach on campus and students who come on campus are certainly put at risk. I think anyone on campus, there's a level of risk. Teresa and the university have been excellent at providing as many safeguards as possible for the administrative assistants. I've walked around the areas, I've talked to several administrative assistants that I've seen working. I don't know how much more we could do, except to say we're not going to be there at all. No administrative assistant is working every day of the week. In fact, I don't know if anyone is working more than 2 full days spread out throughout the week. We did ask for choice. I did not require or assign times. You may have heard that from some other parts of the universities that they did it. I didn't even know how to do that. Okay. So I wanted to first see what could we get by asking people what would work with them and tell them we do need to have some staff. I think our lowest hours are, maybe someone coming in a couple of hours one afternoon. And some other people wanted to come in, frankly, the whole week. Well, we aren't doing it. So we are taking risks, but again, we are welcoming students back. The dormitory, students have been moving in since last Thursday. If we do that and don't show up at all, that is a problem. That's a big problem. Okay, another question. We need to submit the assessment reports to the core program by November 20. I don't have an answer to that question, but we'll take these down, and that one I'll find out. There are a lot of process questions I don't know the answers to. They're just too soon for me, and I want to be honest with you. I'm still trying to figure out the whole academic year, not the academic calendar, but what happens when, right? What other questions do we have? Let's see. Okay. We're almost out of time, and maybe we are because we can't quite see the clock from here. But as you can see, we're modeling behavior with the masks. I encourage you to watch Convocation this afternoon. It was taped on Monday morning. I was there. I don't think you'll see me because I was the audience. But everyone is wearing masks in rooms. So the president asked us that, she just told us, she said, we have to model good behavior. When she does a town hall, she's alone in her office or wherever she is, alone. But we weren't alone in that room. And so I will tell you, if you watched the Democratic conference at all last night and saw how they set it up for the vice president's, the candidate's speech, there were reporters in the room. They were probably closer together than we were. There were very few, I think there were 10 of us in the small auditorium. And we were about 10 feet from each other or more. And everyone speaks with masks on. It's unpleasant. Your students, if you teach on campus, will see you that way. I don't like this at all. I feel, like I'm sweating, almost like I'm in a sauna, but it's not going to be forever. This will end today in a few minutes, and I'll take it off. I'll switch on my cloth mask and be more comfortable. But our behavior is important. No, I should say about masks. About masks and wipes. Wipes are available throughout the building. Maybe not exactly everywhere everyone would like, because everyone wants slightly different things, but they're really widely available. So, work with your administrative assistant on that, and if you need anything, let us know for sure. The cafe will be open. It'll be grab and go style for the most part. If you've been to the cafe, I was there Monday, but it's changed since Monday. The seating is there. There are tables there. There's space, the tables, but there are also the stickers telling you where you should and shouldn't sit. So we are going to have to keep on top of this, not only ourselves, but with students, and really be as charitable as you can with students. Someone's going to forget a mask. Someone's going to leave a mask in the bathroom somewhere else. We have plenty of masks in all the offices. Send them to the dean's office. We'll give them a mask. That's fine. It's not a problem. If we see repeated behavior, then we have to address it. But I don't want us to feel like we're policing. You know, there were people who work in the building, in the physical structure of the building. They do great work, but last week, some of them didn't understand or not operate. I just told them. It's not really what I wanted to do in academia, but they complied. I'm not sure they were happy. All right, we're out of time. It's wonderful to meet all of you and to welcome you back. I wish you all the best as you continue to inspire your students and each other and do great things here at the university. I'm really looking forward to the day we can see each other in person. I appreciate that on Monday. Thank you. Have a good day.